Hey friends, my name's Aaron Ciotti. Everybody calls me Ciotti. Welcome to Fresh Gear Friday. That was the brand new newbie drone BLV5 Acrobee 2S75. And it got me kicked out of the mall. It's this thing's fault. I flew a bunch of 1S batteries and then I put one 2S battery up in the air and I get kicked out. Now, I think I got kicked out because I was sitting on the floor, to be honest. He was like, you can't sit on the floor in the mall. At first he said, you can't fly that. And I was like, really? It's a kid's toy. And I'm just waiting for my 14-year-old, bro. What's the deal? He's like, you also can't sit on the floor. I was like, okay. So I have a feeling that he saw me sitting on the floor, and that's why he came over. Although he might have heard it, right? So I'm going to play some flight footage for you. I brought a couple of different rigs, flew a bunch of them, so that you can really get some like good sort of head-to-head comparisons. Where's the... Huzzah! So the first thing I flew was the Ultimate Freestyle Cinewhoop 1S 18 grams dry micro V antenna 2G4 0702 32,000 kV motors, HQ ultralight props. I'm going to put all these flight files on in a minute, but I just want to run you through what I did. I flew a battery or two on this, totally quiet, totally chill. Somebody actually, a guy and his kid came over, and the kid was like, I know you, you're CiottiFPV. I was like, oh, Jesus. And his dad was like asking me some good questions, and it was cool. His dad was like, I explained like bind and flies to his dad, and you know, like packages where you get goggles, transmitter, quad, blah blah blah, and that was super cool. So flew this guy. Play the file for you in a minute. And then I put the I just kind of like ramped it up in terms of noise level. So yeah, 18 gram 1S rig. Totally silent. Then I put the HDZero rig up in the air, actually. Just a little bit heavier, still totally silent. This is the HDZero AIO5 flight controller, Weebleed 0702 40,000 kV motors, Gemfan 1210 biblades. This is the silly little antenna that they give you with the AIO5, and this is the lightweight camera, the race camera, in a with a Modulus 6 canopy that I opened up a little bit to mount it in there. So then I flew this. You're going to see that in a minute. Then I flew this guy, the 75mm. So this is just a Modulus 7 1S ELRS with a motor swap, basically. BT 2.0 swap as well. VCI 0802.8 27,000 kV motors on the HQ ultralight biblades, which are very fragile, but they fly good. And then a micro V antenna, Runcam Nano 3 camera. Also, the 65mm rig is also on a Runcam Nano 3 camera. And then the last thing I fled, all was well, everything was fine, flying 1S. I was sitting on the floor. I think that's why Segway Paul Blart Mall Cop came over. And then I flew this guy, and that's what you just saw. That was the only amount of flight that I got in this. At like just kind of cruising around, this is not much louder. At full throttle, it's absolutely louder. I mean, that's 2S for you. Like 2S is it's 100% more voltage than 1S. It is a massive jump. And so, yeah, this is the brand new, it released yesterday, Newbie Drone, BLV5, 2S, Acrobee 75. I don't know. All those words are used in the name. I probably got them in the wrong order. It comes with ASI 1.6-inch tri-blade propellers, 0804 Newbie Drone motors, which are, I want to say 14,000. They might be 15,000 kV. Hold on, let me see. 14,000 kV. XT30, because this is for 2S. We're going to look at battery selection in a little bit, but Newbie Drone sent me a Tattoo 2S 450 and 850. I'm not even going to bother to fly the 850 because on the 450, I'm getting over 4 minutes, which is plenty. So no real reason to fly the 850. I also could not get the 850 into the little battery, TPU battery bay thing. I'm certain that you can get it in here if you push it hard enough. That's what but I didn't because it's just silly. It's going to be way too heavy, and I'm already getting 4 minutes of runtime on the 450. I don't like more than 4 minutes, and I'm going to need to take a nap halfway through the battery. It's just silly. Don't run the 2S 850 on this. That's ridiculous. The motors are going to start to get hot. It's going to really stress the thing out. It's silly. You don't need that kind of runtime. Fly smaller batteries, smaller MAH batteries. They'll fly better, and then you just change them. It takes like 4.5 seconds to change these batteries on Cinewhoops. Don't run those massive batteries. That's ridiculous. Brand new AIO, BLV5. This has the new school Goober canopy on it, which accepts Nano cameras that have screw mounts. This camera is the Runcam Nano 4, which is actually pretty good. Newbie Drone uses their own specific, much smaller OSD chip setup. And so the video quality is not quite as good as all of the other AIOs, basically, that use the giant rectangular OSD chip. So you lose a little bit of video quality, but they can squeeze more stuff on the board. This has really high amp fets. I want to say they're like 16 amp fets. I'm looking it up real quick here. MPU 6000 gyro, which is pretty cool. Here we go. It's going to tell me here. 18 amp fets, yo. So they wouldn't be able to put the 18 amp fets on here, more than likely, if they used the regular OSD chip. I got to be honest. I would rather them use the regular OSD chip for better analog video quality, and then drop down to like a 12 amp FET or something like that. One of the main limitations to the Newbie Drone AIOs is the fact that they use this different OSD setup, and yeah, it really does impact the video quality. Does analog look like crap no matter what? Sure. But this makes it look noticeably worse. And, you know, sometimes like when it comes to like comparing analog cameras, it's kind of like there's not like a massive difference between them. There's not enough of a difference between them for me to like really care too much about it. The Runcam Nano 3, it's such a shame it's been discontinued, but the Runcam Nano 3 is way lighter than any of the other analog FPV Cinewhoop cameras. And so that's really the one that I prefer because it's so much lighter. Is the video quality a little bit worse? Probably, because it uses a tiny little plastic lens, but it's not that much worse. With the Newbie Drone aios, like, they're really at that point where like the difference in video quality, it's up to you. It might not be a deal breaker for you. I kind of go back and forth. Sometimes I'm like, it's too much. Like the decrease in quality is a little bit too much. But then when I fly the tiny lifters, and I'm carrying around an Insta360 Go 2, it's kind of like, well, this is fine. I'm willing to put up with this to be able to carry this Insta360 because the tiny lifter is such a cool little kind of setup. So yeah, there's kind of my thoughts on the video quality. I'm going to play a bunch of these flight files in a second, and you can decide on the video quality yourself. I've got a 2G4 with a Runcam Nano 3. I've got an X12 with a Runcam Nano 3, and then the HDZero rig. So you'll have like regular old analog with a not so great camera. You know what? Let's start playing them now. I'm going to start playing those flight files right now, and I'll talk over the rest of this. So yeah, you'll get to make up your own decision there. So here you go. This is the Ultimate Freestyle Cinewhoop here, which is a 2G4 Happy Model AIO with a paired with a Runcam Nano 3 and a micro V, an ORT micro V antenna. So that's what you're looking at here. I will just kind of let this go. And then I think the next file is going to be HDZero, but we'll see. We'll see. It'll be very obvious. So what else can I tell you about the BLV5? It's using a regular old whip antenna with the metal piece. I did not really modify this almost at all. I did some tuning stuff. I put my rates on it. I did some little things here and there, but I didn't change the propellers. I didn't change the antenna. I didn't really change anything physically about this thing. I just kind of flew it. This is not what you're watching now. What you're watching right now is the Ultimate Freestyle Cinewhoop. We're going to get to this flight footage. The opening of the live stream had the flight footage from this thing. So if you've been here from the beginning, you've already got a comparison of a regular OSD chip with a Runcam Nano 3 versus the Newbie Drone OSD setup with a Runcam Nano 4. The Runcam Nano 4 is a camera that has a much bigger lens on it, and so it's almost certainly like a better analog camera, but then that video is going through the different OSD setup on the Newbie Drone rig. So what you're looking at right now is the big OSD chip with a Runcam Nano 3 with the tiny little plastic lens. Again, on the 2G4 Happy Model board with a micro V antenna. I am actually really happy with the way that this BLV5 flies. These 0804 motors make a ton of power, as they should. Just like a 4mm tall motor is going to blast, especially on 2S. It's only 14,000 kV. These motors could probably be like, they could probably make these all the way up to like 18,000 kV, and they would just keep making more and more and more power. What would probably happen at that point is that these motors would overheat. I think it's actually kind of a good call on keeping these 804s to 14,000 kV for 2S, because I at 14,000 kV, I don't think they're going to make enough power to overheat. Admittedly, I would kind of like to see this rig with an 0803 as an analog rig, right? Like, it's not carrying. We've done so much testing with 75mm rigs over the last like 6 months to a year, right? So I'm pretty dialed on this stuff. I think they could get away with an 0803 on this thing. All right, so there's the Ultimate Freestyle Cinewhoop battery. Now we're gonna move on to. Let me turn the volume up I talked to future me in this and told myself what I was about to fly. Let me just...
So that was the...
hold on.
That was the 32,000 kV Ultimate Freestyle Cinewhoop Micro V antenna.
Come on.
HQ tri-blades. This is now the 0802.8.
There we go.
75mm rig.
Cool. All right, so now we are flying the Jungle Gym Basher with the 0802.8 motors, 27,000 kV, HQ ultralight biblades, and a 450 mAh 1S battery. So now you're looking at video from another RunCam Nano 3, but it's going through an X12 AIO with the same Micro V antenna. At some point here, I think I landed to check what milliwatts rather the VTX is set up to, because I instantly noticed a lot more multipathing. So I assume that I might not have landed to check it, but I assume I've got this on 100 milliwatts, which is where the extra bounces are coming for that are making all this garbage, versus the Ultimate Freestyle Cinewhoop 65mm rig is on 25 milliwatts. So this is actually a great example. Like, we talk about that every once in a while. If you're in like a super high multipath environment, more milliwatts is not the answer. And a lot of times less milliwatts will give you a cleaner video signal. This thing also has bent up motors. So there's a bunch of like jello and just general vibration that's happening that's making this image look even worse. From just those vibrations. All right, so that's what you're looking at here. The X12 has the standard OSD chip on it. So realistically, like, the video quality here is no different from what we were looking at a second ago, but I believe that we're looking at 100 milliwatts versus 25 milliwatts, and I think it's pretty obvious that the video quality here is significantly worse. Also, we've got those vibrations from these motors being banged up. So yeah, there's a little comparison for you. Next up, we're gonna see HDZero, which is not a great like comparison, but I mean, whatever. I had the rig. I wanted to kind of give a super wide variety of stuff. I kind of wanted to bring Walksnail, but I didn't want to bring another set of goggles with me. So I left the Walksnail stuff at home and just brought the HDZero goggles. Oh, speaking of, the DVR, the DVR is coming off of a set of HDZero goggles with rapid fire, a nice tall singularity antenna here, and then a patch antenna, an Immersion RC patch antenna on the front. All right, so now we've got HDZero. The HDZero is coming into the same set of goggles with 4 stubby antennas, 2 stubby singularities, and then 2 of these Foxeer lollipop antennas on the front. So let's get this going. HDZero looks really good right in front of myself, but I was actually really surprised at how bad the breakup got, just like on the other side of the open area here. Maybe it's just that the HDZero breakup is such, like, it's so, you know, it's so sharp and kind of, in my opinion, a little bit obnoxious, but I don't know. I thought that HDZero would have had a lot better range than analog. This is actually me coming in. This is me coming in to check at what the power output is. What I will say is that the AIO5 comes with an ultra lightweight antenna that doesn't have the little metal ground plane on it. So the first 2 rigs that you were just looking at, those are using Micro V antennas, which have proper ground planes built in to the PDB antenna. Now you're looking at HDZero through a pretty shitty antenna, realistically, but it's a really lightweight antenna, which is why they're packaging that one. I'm gonna move this HDZero rig over to a Micro V antenna. It's gonna gain some weight when I do that, but like, yeah, one of my complaints from the beginning about HDZero has been that it doesn't really seem to have very good range. And this stupid little antenna that it ships with is not doing it any favors. I don't like the way that it breaks up, so I would rather sacrifice a little bit of weight and have an antenna that's going to break up less than, yeah. The Micro V antennas are pretty lightweight. So it won't be a terrible increase in weight. My guess is going to be it's like maybe 0.3, 0.4 of a gram extra. I hate to make it any heavier than it already is, but yeah, it's just the breakup is so harsh. I don't like it. And so yeah, this video quality is going to get better with this rig. I've just kind of had it. This is like the last time that I'm gonna fly it on the silly little antenna that comes with. Flying really low to the ground is pretty cool with this thing because it has the better video quality when it's not breaking up like that. You can see the ground a little bit better, which makes flying low a little bit easier. So I was just kind of trying to show that off a little bit here. Again, this is the lighter weight HDZero camera. We're gonna do mailbag in a little bit and see. Look how bad that's breaking up. And like I wasn't even flying around the corner. Like I'm just sitting on the floor over there. So yeah, not impressed with the HDZero like connection quality. But yeah, I mean like we'll get a proper antenna on there, and I'm sure that it'll get better. The ultra lightweight whip antenna with the ground plane removed is no good. That was actually the battery going all the way dead. I got no warnings whatsoever. I don't know why. I have the warnings turned on. I gotta kind of investigate that. So now we are on to the BLV5. And now if you weren't here for the opening of the live stream, you'll get to see me get kicked out of the mall. So again, the newbie drone uses a much smaller OSD chip, and it just puts, so what the OSD chips do is they put a transparent layer over the video so that they can draw the letters of your OSD. The standard OSD chip that everybody else uses, it's big. It's really big. It's like obnoxiously big. It's this giant rectangular chip that's on the board. If you ever look at a flight controller, you'll see it there. Newbie Drone has chosen not to use that. They're doing their own OSD, which is on a much smaller chip, and unfortunately, that invisible layer is not as invisible, and it puts this it gives it sort of just this muddiness. There's also a lot of multipathing. Like there's a lot of flickering and flashing and like crazy colors going on. We'll plug this thing in a second and take a look at what milliwatt the VTX is. I would have expected the video quality to be a little bit better on here. I can see the Segway mall cop kind of rolling around a little bit there. Now I'm starting to think that he did hear the drone because he's kind of moving around. I couldn't see him. Now I can see him on the right side of the screen there. When I was flying, I did not see him. He rolled up and like he was talking really quietly, and I could barely hear. Like right now, he's already talking to me, but he was talking so quiet that I didn't even hear him. And then like he repeated himself 2 more times, and then at some point I actually said, I was like, "Hey man, is there somebody talking to me right now?" And then I heard like. And I was like, if you're talking to me, I can't hear you, man. Hold on. And then that's when I came back. Actually, when I did this, I was like, oh, okay. There's a person here. It was very weird. I guess he was embarrassed or something. I don't know. He obviously didn't care about his job. He was just being told what to do by whoever's watching the cameras, I guess. But he was fine. There was no big deal. He just walked over. He's like, you can't do that. You also can't sit on the floor. I was like, okay, no sweat. That's actually not what I said. I said, really? I'm just flying a little kid's toy, waiting for my 14-year-old to finish up. He's like, yeah, no, you can't be here. It's fine, whatever. So then I went and I flew it outside. So that, what you were just watching, 1:50, I didn't run the battery all the way down. That was the smallest battery. That was a old school Talon 2S 300 milliamp hour battery. I'm now seeing that it's a high volt battery. I did not charge it up to high volt. This is now me. It's 661. It's not that. I'm sure that if he could walk around, he would. They make them ride the Segways because they say security on them. I'm assuming. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He seemed like a perfectly fine guy. So yeah, there was the runtime on the beginning of this 300 mAh battery. Now this is still that same battery. So I'm going to run this battery the rest of the way down. Again, I did not high volt charge any of these batteries. I kind of didn't realize that they were high volt batteries. So all of these run times are going to get a little bit longer once these batteries are high volt. I gotta say, man, I'm really impressed with the runtime that this thing gets on these. Like, this guy is heavy. This is a heavy analog 75mm Cinewhoop. The ASI props are very efficient. I think that has a lot to do with the runtime. But yeah, I'm pretty impressed with how long this thing runs for. We're gonna talk about like what I would change about it towards as we dive a little bit deeper here. But yeah, in terms of runtime, this thing is damn good. Really no reason for that 2S 850 mAh battery. Like, this gets great runtime on these smaller milliamp batteries, so like run them. Don't run such a big battery. That's silly. This thing is 36.5 grams dry. So for a 75mm rig, it's heavy for sure. So there you go. There was another, I don't know, 30 or so seconds. This is now a 2S 450 mAh battery that I'm going to run on this thing. So again, the dry weight, 36.5 grams. I'm going to compare that to the 2S Walksnail rig, which is kind of an unfair comparison because the Walksnail setup is adding like 6 grams. But just to give you an idea, this guy is 36.9 grams. So yes, the analog 2S rig is a little bit lighter, but it's not that much lighter. It's less than a gram lighter, and it's analog. It's not carrying around a 1080p 60 frame per second beautiful Walksnail VTX and camera setup. So it's a fatty, but it's a 2S fatty, and the amount of power that you get completely offsets that weight in terms of the power to weight ratio. Not in terms of when you go to like turn corners and you have to deal with that extra weight and momentum, right? So in terms of flight characteristics, this thing flies just like the Walksnail 2S rig, which if you're going to do like really in tight flying, like fly around the house, jungle gym bashing, that kind of stuff, it's a little bit heavy. If I'm going to fly an analog 75mm rig, it's going to be lighter than this. That's just me. I'm pretty spoiled. Like I said, this thing flies really good. If I'm going to fly something this heavy, it's going to be carrying around Walksnail, admittedly. But still, this flies pretty good. Like, you're watching it rip around. Good runtime. I wasn't pushing it super hard when I'm flying like a brand new rig. I'm not going to hammer the living hell out of it. I'm going to, try to preserve it so I get a bunch of batteries and I can actually talk about the thing before I blow it up. Eventually I'll blow it up. But yeah. Again, for a little bit of perspective, the 75mm rig, 1S rig that I was flying a little bit ago in here, is right in front of me, and it is 25 grams dry. Again, for some perspective as to what an analog 75mm rig can weigh when it's set up for 1S. The 2S batteries are significantly heavier, right? So like right now I'm flying a 2S 450. That's a big old battery. So like right now you're watching this thing heavier, significantly heavier than the Walksnail 75 2S rig that I fly on the 300 mAh Cinewhoop batteries. That would be something that I would definitely do. One of the first things that I would do to this BLV5 would be to move it over to BT 3.0, get rid of this XT30 connector. The BT 3.0 connector is lighter than this XT30, and then you can run these Cinewhoop 2S 300 mAh batteries. Let me just make sure that these batteries will fit in the little battery holder on this thing. There's also a BT 3.0 battery that's 450 milliamps that would work totally fine. Yes, absolutely. So these Cinewhoop batteries fit totally fine on this thing. So that might be my very first upgrade that I would do to the BLV5, would be to get it onto BT 3.0, and then start running significantly lighter batteries. Let me get you some battery weights real quick. So let me take the stream off of the desktop view real quick. So here's what you'd be able to do. You'd be able to run these awesome little 300 mAh 2S Cinewhoop batteries. These batteries are 15 grams, right on the nose. So you'll be able to run a 15-gram battery, and you'll save a little bit of weight over the XT30, all right, versus what you were just watching is a 450 mAh2S battery with XT30 and a balance lead. This is a 26-gram battery. So that was just hauling around a 26-gram battery. Again, yeah, you can save 11 grams off of the all-up weight by moving probably 12 grams because you're going to lose this XT30 and replace it with a BT 3.0. You're also the other BT 3.0 battery is the BetaFPV 2S 450. If you want the same runtime as the Tattoo 2S 450, you can get that, right? This is going to get you like over 4 minutes. This battery weighs 27 grams, pretty much right on the nose. So these will be your two battery options. 27 grams here versus the Tattoo, which is 26. Okay, so I mean, a gram difference between the Tattoo 450. This 300 mAh battery, though, this is going to be the move. This is the battery that you're going to want to run on this thing. You're going to get over 2.5 minutes, probably closer to 3 minutes of runtime. It's going to lighten the whole thing up. It's going to crash better. It's going to fly better. So yeah, that would be the main change that I would make if I were building this thing up. If I snagged one of these and I was interested in, maybe I will. I'm not totally sure. The gram difference between these two batteries is going to get figured out by is going to get nullified by taking the XT30 off and replacing it with a BT 3.0. So you'll have your 4+ minute runtime battery, and then you'll have your 3-minute runtime battery. This is only available from tinywhoop.com. 2S 300 mAh BT 3.0. Awesome battery. We're so lucky to have this battery. So yeah, I would definitely do that to keep the weight down on this thing, because that's really the main issue with it is how heavy it is. You could certainly save some weight elsewhere on this thing. This Goober canopy is a little bit heavier, especially with the camera that has the mounting screws. It's really handy, admittedly, because you can, if you want to change your up tilt, you can just loosen the screws, change it, and then you can lock the screws down, which is great. But you could certainly save some weight by going to one of like the racing style TPU canopies and like a lighter camera. You could probably save 2, maybe 3 grams doing that if you wanted to shave a little bit of weight there. I don't know. This thing is heavy enough that I don't necessarily know if I would do that. I would maybe leave it with this kind of setup. It's got plenty of power. I think changing the battery setup would be the better way to drop a whole bunch of weight off of this thing. The other upgrade that I would seriously think about, but you might as well wait until you destroy these motors, is moving this over to a motor with a 1.5mm motor shaft. At this weight, I don't think the 1mm motor shafts are going to last terribly long on these 804 14,000s, which is really a shame because I'm really impressed by how much power these motors make. They feel really good in the air. I'm going to play some more flights in a second. But so yeah, what I would say is just run these motors because they fly great. And then eventually you're probably going to bend up one of these motor shafts. Keep flying it until it's just unbearable. You might need to pull the PID tune down as it gets more and more beat up. But once it's completely unbearable, I would remove these motors altogether and swap on a set of like T-Motor 1002 18,000s or the sub 250 0803 18,000s, or BetaFPV makes an 1102 18,000. With all three of those motors, you're going to motor limit it down a little bit, but that's easy to do. You go into the PIDs tab, and then there's the motor limiting. Bring it down to like 80%, fly it on those motors, see how you like it there. If it's not enough power, move it up to 85%. There's also an RC and Power 1002 14,000 kV that you could swap on and run it at 100%. Here's the annoying thing about doing that. The newbie drone boards all use JST 1.0 motor plugs. None of those motors come with that. All of those motors use the industry standard JST 1.25 motor plug. So when you get any of those motors, you're going to need to desolder the battery plug on those motors and replace it with these. I mean, at that point, you've removed these 0804s, so you might as well just desolder the motor plugs from these guys and then swap them onto that other motor. It's a little bit fiddly. If it's your first time soldering, it's going to be tough. If you've been soldering for a while, you're going to be totally fine. Look, here's what you need to do to get it done, and get it done cleanly, even if you're not great at soldering. Go to Amazon and get yourself a set of nerd goggles. Just do it. Working on Cinewhoops with these, you can see what you're doing. I have relatively good vision. I can't see shit working on Cinewhoops until I put these on. I used to do all of my Cinewhoop work without these, and like it was a little bit of a crapshoot sometimes. Like I couldn't quite see if like pads were bridged. Once you have these, it's easy, man. You also want to have a little 5x loop. This is super valuable, but this is really hard to... The focal distance on this is really short, so it's really hard to keep this in your eyeball and solder, because you're going to be soldering like really close to your face, and you're going to like light your hair on fire. It's not great. So do yourself a favor. Spend like $15 whole or whatever it is on a set of these. There's like 80 different manufacturers that make them. Just type in like head-mounted magnifier or something like that into it. Actually, down below, I might have a link in the tools section in the description. If you want to buy one of these, I also have an affiliate link in the description. Do me a favor and use that. But yeah, get yourself a set of these. If you don't already have these, you're insane. Get yourself one of these. And then if you really want to make your life... a thing of this thermally reactive electronic goop from Mass Adhesive is great. You can also just use blue Funtac. This will get the job done. Best case scenario, though, I've absolutely fallen in love with the OmniFixo. This little guy is just gold. OMNIFIXO, right down here. OmniFixo. Somebody type it into the chat for me. OMNIFIXO. This thing is awesome. Like this thing, these goggles, and a soldering iron and flux, and like you'll be able to do Cinewhoop work confidently and get good quality that holds up and is durable. Just do it. You can thank me later. It's amazing. So yeah, that would be sort of my upgrade path for this. But these motors are actually, I'm so impressed. I thought for sure that these motors were going to overheat because they're an 804, which is a 2-to-1 width to height ratio. That is like dangerous. That 2-to-1 width to height ratio, if it's a motor that's going to start making a bunch of power, it's going to overheat. I think, like I said earlier, the fact that they only made these motors 14,000 kV, I think that's why they don't overheat. If these were like an 18,000 kV motor, they would make a hell of a lot more power, but then they would start to overheat. So kind of an interesting decision. In a perfect world, I would rather these be an 0803. I think at 14,000 kV, they would still make the same amount of power, and then this whole thing would get lighter. So the motor sizing I'm not in love with, but again, it flies great. I'm really shocked at how good this thing flies with these motors on it. I know that Newbie Drone already had these motors for another rig. I don't think that they have an 803. So they have an 03, a Cinewhoop that carries the 03 video system, and it had these motors. So I know that they've got a million of these motors sitting around, right? So it makes sense that they use these motors on this rig. I was ready to like hate these motors, but they fly great. The thing that I'm most excited about, I kind of buried the lead on this a little bit an hour into the live stream. The thing that I'm actually the most excited about personally with this rig is this frame. This is a new version of the Cockroach 75. and it's a different plastic. So this is the frame that I use with the tiny lifters, and the version of this Cockroach 75 frame that's been around is this harder, much more brittle plastic. And the design of the Cockroach 75 frame uses very, very thin standoffs. What's nice about that is that they don't obstruct the thrust very much. So this is a really efficient 75 millimeter frame. Unfortunately, when you run the carbon fiber brace, that adds a ton of additional garbage to block the thrust, which we've talked about ad nauseum. This is why Fractal's frames are make a lot less power and have a lot less efficiency, and all the other carbon fiber frames, right? And on Cinewhoops, that really does matter. So the previous generation Cockroach 75 frame is very fragile, and with the tiny lifters carrying the 26 gram Insta360 Go, I break these frames quite a bit. This is a much softer plastic, right? I'm attempting to put the same amount of force on both of these. Just take my word for it. This is a much softer plastic frame, and that's going to make this frame much more durable. So I'm super excited about this frame. Once this frame is available by itself, I'm gonna buy a bunch of these, and the tiny lifters are gonna get new frames. So that's really, really cool. I'm super excited about that. What else? It's got the Immortal T. It's got like a sort of a diversity-ish ELRS setup with an Immortal T in the back, and then a tiny little whip antenna here in the rear. Seemed totally fine. I didn't get any link quality warnings. I wouldn't expect that. The video quality was the video transmission quality seemed to be fine as well. Again, it's got a regular old whip antenna with the ground plane in the goober canopy. Totally fine. Let's play some more flight footage from it. So now, well, I already played some outdoor flight footage for you. Let's keep going. So I then got kicked out of the parking garage. They told me to leave the mall entirely. I was like, fine. So I drove around the corner and found a little jungle gym for some jungle gym bashing. Hold on, what am I flying here? This looks like the HDZero rig. Maybe not, though? This might be the little Ultimate Freestyle Tiny Whoop. Here we go. This is the HDZero build, isn't it?
All right, here we are. HDZero build.
There you go. Here's the HDZero
jungle gym
rig jungle gym bashing, yo. There you go. So now we've got the HDZero rig outside, much less multipathing, which is going to be really good. This has got the super lightweight antenna without the ground plane on it. So yeah, that's going to help quite a bit. In a second, I'll fly this around some more at this jungle gym, but I just want to give you a little bit of an idea of what a 65 millimeter relatively lightweight rig flies like at this particular jungle gym, because then once we're flying this, you're going to really see a difference in that all up weight. And so what you want to pay attention to here, right, is like how often I'm crashing, and like just the way that it changes directions, and the way that it kind of I can make corrections quick enough, and it can just handle its weight. This is a 65 millimeter rig. It's a little bit heavier than the analog ones, right, because of the HDZero AIO5, but it's still fairly lightweight, right? 20 grams dry. And so, yeah, not a lot of mass to move around. I can make like last second corrections and not hit stuff. You'll see a drastic difference once I get the 2S rig up in the air. It's just a lot more weight to kind of manage. I'm also able to fly this thing relatively flat. I don't have to bank and roll a lot to deal with the extra weight, because there's not a lot of extra weight, but I can still crash it like a son of a bitch. A lot of these crashes are because I'm not making the correction. I'm just assuming that it'll go through the gap. You will definitely see a difference. I didn't realize that there's like netting down below this thing, and I was flying like an idiot for a second there, so I'll just fast forward. This is an HDZero AIO5 in a Cockroach V3 frame, BT 2.0. It's the lightweight camera. Mobula 6 old school canopy, garbage, but super, super, super lightweight antenna. The regular whip antenna with the ground plane removed. We bleed 0702 40,000 kV motors on Gemfan 1210 biblades. That's what you're looking at here. And this is a full 300 mAh battery. Apparently I'm not getting any warnings on this thing, so that actually then fell out of the air. So the runtime was good, but we way over discharged this battery. So now we're gonna go to. I'm just gonna turn the volume up. I think this is now the BLV5. It's something analog. I'm taking one of the antennas off the HDZero ports and I'm putting it onto the analog receiver. So this is something analog. This is either...
All right, so as a point of comparison, here is the 32,000 kV...
Ultimate Freestyle Cinewhoop.
Ultimate Freestyle Cinewhoop.
All right, cool. So here's your comparison of pretty much like the lightest... you could make an HDZero 65 mil rig a little bit lighter, but in my opinion, you're going to sacrifice durability. This is the Ultimate Freestyle Cinewhoop. It's not the lightest you can possibly build it. It's designed to be very durable. So yeah, this is a really, really, really good comparison. These two builds are super similar. Same frame, same canopy, obviously different AIOs. This is 0702 32,000 kV. The HDZero is 0702 40,000 kV. This is on the HQ tri-blade propeller, which makes a little bit more power than the bi-blades that are on the other rig. But realistically, like, these two rigs have pretty similar power to weight ratios. The extra weight of the AIO5 gets gobbled up by the 40,000 kV motors, whereas this thing benefits from being a little bit lighter weight. And then we've got the lower kV motors. These motors are a lot lower kV, but then I've got the tri-blade props on here. So that kind of wakes these motors up a little bit. Flying these two things back to back, they feel super similar. I can't really tell that big of a difference in flight characteristics between them because I've matched up the power to weight ratios. This one probably does have a I don't know. There was very little adjustment between the two of them. The main adjustment was in the up tilt. The HDZero rig has significantly more up tilt than the analog rig that you're watching me fly right now. This rig has better runtime because it's lighter. That's the other big kind of difference. And right there, you're not going to get a full battery because the motor that I repaired, I actually need to leave this out. The motor that slipped the shaft on the bell, motor number 2, that I repaired with the Loctite last week, it slipped again. So yeah, this motor's got to go in the bin, and I need to replace this motor bell. That Loctite stuff, it'll get you by for like I've always said, it'll get you by for a few extra batteries, but it's not really a permanent fix. You're gonna end up having to replace the motor. So make sure you have 0.99 and 1.49 or 1.5 millimeter drill bits, and you're drilling out your propellers, because that's the main way that you ruin these motors and cause that to start happening. So there's the end of that. Now we're going to get to the newbie drone BLV5. You can immediately see the difference in video quality. You were just looking at a 2G, a Runcam Nano 3 being fed through a 2G4 with the standard OSD chip out through a micro V antenna. Now you are seeing a Runcam Nano 4, which is actually a better camera with a much bigger lens on it, but it's going through the newbie drone Acrobee's sort of like proprietary OSD setup that's on a much smaller chip, which is why they do that. But unfortunately, the video quality does suffer a little bit. On one hand, analog looks like crap no matter what, so like who cares? But as a pilot, it is harder to fly this. Like when I'm flying this, it is legitimately more difficult to see finer details like these ropes and whatnot. What you're also seeing here is how much heavier this thing is. So it's picking up speed faster. I'm having a harder time managing the extra weight, but we're still ripping a jungle gym pretty good, right? Like this is still, I had a blast flying this. Again, I'm really happy with the way this flies. This is me now showing you what you can do with the heavier, more powerful 2S rig that the 1S builds don't do as good. You can rip around and fly it bigger. You can rip around the tops of the trees and throw it over bigger gaps and stuff like that. So yeah, the heavier Cinewhoops, there are some benefits. It's not all bad. I kind of like to be somewhere in between. That was me trying to drop elevation and get into this tube, but I just kind of couldn't get it done. Again, it's harder to fly these. When they're heavier like this, it is harder to fly them. What you want to do is fly them bigger. Fly around the tops of the trees, stuff like that. Cheetonian says you are showing the video of the Acrobee outside. Correct. You can't see the screen. Awesome. Sorry, guys. Let me go all the way back. Damn it. Okay. In chat, when did I switch to? I think I switched at the end of the pre. All right, so hold on. Let me give you. I want to give you a proper head-to-head comparison. Hold up. I don't know when I started just showing my big dumb face, but just to make absolutely sure, I give you that head-to-head comparison. Here is the Runcam Nano 3 going through a 2G4 flight controller with the standard OSD chip, right? This is what we're all used to seeing for regular old analog. Okay, there's that. I want to leave you with this one. The Runcam Nano 3 is not the best camera outside, right? So there's that. And now here's the beginning of the other one. So now you've got a Runcam Nano 4, better camera, but it's feeding through Newbie Drone's OSD setup, which is on a much smaller chip. It's why they're able to put 18 amp fets on this thing rather than 12 amp fets. But you lose a little bit of video quality, as you can obviously see. This is also a worse antenna. This is a regular whip antenna. What you were just seeing was the ORT Micro V antenna. I also don't know what output power this thing is on, but what you were just watching was 25 milliwatts. So I'm sure that this thing is not on 25 milliwatts. It's even if it's on 25 milliwatts, it's a head-to-head comparison. I think this is actually on 100 milliwatts. There's a lot more of this like flashing and like the colors kind of changing and shifting all over the place. Is one of the big differences that I sort of notice. I've got the OSD turned off right now because the most recent couple of generations of Newbie Drone OSDs do this weird flickering thing. So I've turned it off here. I have OSD on a switch on my setups. Yeah, I think at some point I might turn it back on. Maybe not. I might fly another battery on it here. I think I've covered pretty much everything about this. Yeah. It's got the carbon fiber brace on the bottom. It was very easy to kind of move the tune around a little bit. Like I said earlier, these motors have 1mm motor shafts, and this is heavy. And so I would not think that these motors are going to survive a ton of really hard crashes into concrete, wood, hard surfaces. Crashing into like the mulch here at Jungle Gyms is probably going to be fine, but then like banging into the metal poles is going to be really hard on these motors. I am going to fly this rig a bunch more, and I'll let you know how it does. At the moment, the motor shafts seem okay, but you know, I'm only like 5 batteries in. There were a couple pretty decent hits here, but you know, nothing like brutal. I have not had a crash with this thing yet where I was like, ooh, that probably broke a motor. There was one pretty decent crash towards the end here that hit hard enough to dent the rear, I won't be able to take off afterwards, so it'll be very obvious when that crash is. It dented the duct in and knocked the propeller off of motor 3. And so I had to swap a prop onto here, and then I was able to just bend the duct back, and it was totally fine. Like, you can't even tell that duct that happened to that duct. So, like I said earlier, I'm super excited about this frame. This Cockroach 75 frame in this new material is looking pretty good. Let me get to that crash that... Here we go. All right, so it's going to be up here somewhere. It'll be this next crash. That wasn't too bad. And that was me hitting the ropes head on. It hit the rear motor. So at some point in all of that wiggling and wobbling, the motor 3 duct hit something hard. Hard enough to dent it and pop the propeller off. I'll be honest, that was not a super hard slam. So yeah, this thing has not taken like a big... holy hell, it's going to be on fire when I get to it hit yet. It certainly will. I will keep flying it, and I will certainly hammer this thing hard enough to give you a little bit more durability feedback. This is now, I changed the prop and I put the wrong propeller on, so it Tasmanian deviled on me. This is me changing that propeller out. This is now another 2S 450, so I'm going to keep flying it. This is the end of the flight footage for this thing. I can technically try to fly it in the house here real quick. But I will. I have the 2S 300 mAh super lightweight battery charged, so I'll fly this in the basement. It's gonna be very difficult because it's a heavy, powerful rig, and those are more outside. Look, this is straight up an outdoor tiny whoop. This is not a tiny whoop that you're gonna want to fly inside the house. Can you fly it in the house? Absolutely. Is it going to be incredibly difficult? Yes, for sure. I think this is me checking... Oh, this is me pushing the tune up a little bit. So there was a little bit more prop wash. I have retuned this thing to my kind of standard PID tune. The tune that it came with was okay. I didn't even fly it, though. I have my own tunes that I kind of do. I like the way that they fly. When I fly it around the house, I put the factory tune onto PID Profile 2. Come on, you can't tell me that shit wasn't tasty. We'll go back and just check that out one more time. Just one more time. Through there. Through it again. Oh! Get you some! Get you some, you sons of bitches. Fly 6 batteries a day and you'll be able to do that within a couple of months. I guarantee you. Start flying 6 a day, damn you. Look at what we can do with it. Yes, I'm a decent pilot, but like... It flies good outside. I'm pretty impressed with how it flies. Is it too heavy? Absolutely. Can you do some stuff to make it lighter? For sure. For like, if this was your first rig, you'd have something that flies really decent, man. You'd have something that can do all this stuff. That's a hell of a lot better than my first rig. You know? What else can I say? What else can I say? I think that's about it. I think that's about all I got. I'm interested to fly it more to see how these motors hold up. That was a pretty good hit. That was a good hit right there. That was a full throttle hit into metal. Watch this. I don't know what I was thinking. This was like, this is just me like doing something and just being like, the quad gods will maybe take care of me. That was a full throttle slam into metal. So, and it got right back up, and there's really like, there are no scratches or dents or bangs on this thing. Like it's taken some abuse. You've gotten to see all of the abuse that I've given it. The frame is totally fine. The motors are fine. The propellers have been bent up. I've had to bend the individual blades back 3, maybe 4 times so far. Yeah, the ASI propellers, I think, are helping with the motor durability. So I think if you're going to get one of these and fly it, you should leave it on the ASI propellers. That's going to help these motors last longer. You're going to want to buy a bunch of extra ASI propellers, though, because they are a fragile prop. They fly great. They're super efficient. They make great power, but they are fragile, and the blades do bend up quite a bit. So if you get this thing, buy yourself 4, 5, 6 extra sets of these ASI props and just change the props frequently. And that's going to help the motors last longer. or swap the motors out to a 1.5 millimeter motor shaft setup, and then you won't have to deal with that, and then you can run whatever props you want. But yeah, here's the rest of this flight. There's probably about another minute or so. Runtime is good. Flight characteristics are decent, easy to tune, probably because of the carbon fiber brace. I really appreciate when anybody sends me anything. I make sure that they understand that I'm going to potentially be harsh on the product if it's not up to par with the other stuff that exists. And I was a little bit worried when when I got this and read the specs and saw how heavy it was and stuff like that. I expected way less of it than I got. So I'm kind of happy. Would this be the rig that I personally buy for myself to fly? Probably not. But I have impossibly high standards, and I've spent years and years and years figuring out the absolute perfect frame, the absolute perfect prop, the absolute perfect motor, how to keep it as lightweight as possible. And so, like, I'm going to be a super harsh critic when it comes to that kind of stuff. For most people, they would get this and be totally fine with the flight characteristics. I think the major weakness is going to be the OSD setup and just the way that the image quality that you get out of it. Again, on one hand, analog looks like crap anyway, so who cares if it looks like a little bit worse crap? But at the same time, as you guys could see from some of that other flight footage, everybody else using the standard giant OSD chip, there is a noticeable difference in image quality, and when you're flying it, you do notice that. I love Newbie Drone as a company. Their customer service is great, and they're selling this stuff out of California, not China. So there are benefits to going with something like this rather than pretty much anything else in FPV. I wouldn't, this wouldn't be my choice, but I'm actually, I'm really glad that I got to fly this and that they sent it over, because what this has kind of shown me is that with 75 millimeter rigs, I think 2S is the way. I think I'm gonna dive into 2S on even the analog rigs. Look, I've the Jungle Gym Basher is a really interesting formula. Here's another battery, me flying out in front of the house, actually. The Jungle Gym Basher, which is a Mobula 7 1S with BT 2.0 and a motor swap. The motor swap is the 0802 27,000 kV. This is on a 2S 450, by the way, guys. The motor swap is the iGao limited edition 0802 27,000 kV motors. That setup is awesome. I have tried, but it doesn't have quite enough power, even though it's analog and even though it's lightweight. But it's really decent. It's a really decent rig. I've spent a whole bunch of time lately trying to find motors that make a little bit more power, but are still efficient enough, and you still get like 3-minute run times, and I've come up dry. I cannot find another motor that's really better. This rig, I think, has kind of convinced me that 1S is for 65 millimeter rigs, whether they're rippers, whether they're cruisers, doesn't matter. 1S is perfect on a 65 millimeter build. But when you move up to 75, this has kind of convinced me that 2S is the way. This thing, even though it's heavy, it rips. Like, look at it moving around out here. This flies better than any of my 1S 75 millimeter rigs, full stop. Yes, it's a lot heavier, and at a jungle gym, it's significantly harder to fly than the Jungle Gym Basher will be, unquestionably. But for out in front of your house, for back behind your house, where the gaps aren't as small as what you're going to get at a jungle gym, this thing is awesome. And I think this has really opened my eyes to the fact that 2S has this home on 75 millimeter rigs. So you're going to see a lightweight, who was it? Oh God, somebody sent me a, oh, well, no, that doesn't have a VT. Yeah, I'm going to need to find an AIO, though. I'm going to need to find an AIO that'll take 2S and it's got the VTX and the ELRS on board. But once I do, yeah, I'm really excited to do a analog 2S 75mm rig because of this. And if you want that experience with a bind and fly, this is it, man. Again, you're going to sacrifice a little bit of video quality. But yeah, analog looks like crap anyway. I've completely ignored the chat. I'm so sorry. But I had a lot to say about this, and you know, it's a brand new product, so I wanted to really get that all out there. Hey, this is my full-time job, friends. Do me a favor and help me keep doing this full-time. I'm completely crowdfunded. This way, when somebody sends me a product that's not the best product in the world, I can tell you guys, hey, here's all the problems with it. I'm not relying on Newbie Drone to send me more stuff. I rely on you guys to jump onto my Patreon, to buy some stuff from my Etsy store, to work one-on-one with me through Fiverr. Take advantage of over 8 years of knowledge in a one-on-one session. You'll learn more in a half an hour than you can in like 20 or 30 days on Facebook. I mean, you won't learn shit on Facebook. More than half of the info on Facebook FPV groups is dead ass wrong, and I'm not even exaggerating here. I got a whole bunch of affiliate links you can click. It's all over on CiottiFPV.com. If you like this kind of stuff, that's how you support me. I do need your support if I'm going to keep doing this full time. There are 2 kids living in this house with me that eat everything. And so, yeah, help me out. You guys have enabled me to do this for 3 years. Let's keep it going, man. I will do this as long as I can afford to. So help me out. Jump on over there, and I'll do more reviews like this and tell you what sucks about products and what's great about products. Versus some of the other reviewers that, you know, their model that they've designed is that they kind of rely more on companies sending them stuff as a part of the money that they make, and then they're not going to be as harsh on the products. Admittedly, I'm less harsh on this because they sent it to me for free than if I'd paid for it. If I'd paid for this, I'd be a little bit more upset that it's not the best product in the absolute world, but I'm still giving you absolutely everything that's not great, and then I'm saying, hey, this is why Newbie Drone made that decision. And I think that's totally fair, and hopefully you do too. It doesn't really make any sense to just straight bash these things. Sometimes I will bash stuff because I'll be pissed that I spent a bunch of money on it, and you can probably understand that. There you go. 4 minutes and 10 seconds, and the battery's bouncing back to 7.2 per cell. So I ran the battery down a little bit harder, but we're outside ripping around with it. There you go. There's all my flight footage from these. Right on cue, this battery finishes up. Let me pull this real quick so it stops beeping. And there we go. All right. So, last thing I'm going to do is fly this live for you in the house. I do not recommend that you fly this in the house. This is an outdoor Cinewhoop. Straight up. You can fly it in the house, but when you crash this in the house, it is going to hit your stuff and the people that you live with stuff hard. And like, this is not it. Like, if you're desperate to fly and it's been raining for the last week, sure. Here's the thing though. It's not really going to be very fun to fly around the house because of how heavy it is. You're going to be like, you're about to see me flying like that. So yeah, this is just not your inside the house Cinewhoop. This is your outside the house Cinewhoop. But outside the house, you're going to be able to shoot tiny little gaps with it like you just saw me doing. So let's get this out of the way and prove to you that it can be flown in the house. But again, be careful. Hold on. Where's my VRX? Come on now. Hold on. Let me unplug it and replug it. Hopefully it'll pop back up. All right. Let's see. Did that fix it? Ah, yes. There we go. All right. Pray for me. I'm going to use my old Fat Sharks just because they're sitting right here. Okay, there we go. BLV5 inside the house. bring it right upstairs. Oh my god. All right, so you're immediately seeing, it's heavy. And so I'm going to be super cautious up here. Whew. Being heavy like this also makes it kind of fast. It's also got a bunch of up tilt. Look how little duct there is in view. Great power, though. The 2S really makes incredible power, and it handles the amount of weight that this thing is incredibly well. All right, that's all I'm going to do. There's a whole bunch of Maggie's stuff upstairs that I don't want to accidentally destroy. So let's bring it back on downstairs. If you can't tell, I am focusing. I'm having to focus really hard. This is hard to fly. Can you still do some stuff in the house with it? Absolutely. But I am working hard. Ah! Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo! This is also on a lightweight battery, 2S 300 mAh battery. Let me just get through this battery. And then I'll be able to talk more. Oh, hold on. I forgot to show you guys the other tune. So this is my custom tune. I'll show it to you in Betaflight in a minute. I'm going to go over to PID Profile 2. This is the tune that it ships with. Handles prop wash just fine. Okay. Scary to fly this in the house. Yeah, no, that would have if the tune that they shipped it with was weak, it would have prop washed like crazy there. So the tune they send it out with is totally fine. It's a little sharp for me. I run tunes with a lot of D-gain, which chills the which just kind of chills it out and makes it a little bit less edgy. So there you go, 2 minutes and 8 seconds. I brought it in kind of early. Battery's bouncing back to 7.35. Also, again, this is a high volt battery. I did not charge it to high volt. I didn't realize that these 2S batteries were HV. So all of the flight times that you've seen, I would add like 20, maybe 20 seconds to them. That's what you would get if you properly charge the batteries. I'm not going to fly another battery on this in the house. I'm going to take the massive win that was just given to me by the FPV gods. To give you some perspective, though, I do want to fly another battery on a rig that's like more suited for flying in the house. That's going to be one of these Ultimate Freestyle Cinewhoops. This one is on 0702 36,000 kV motors on the GemFan biblades. Kind of an unfair comparison, but this is not an indoor Cinewhoop. I want to show you what an actual indoor Cinewhoop flies like. This is one that's like very dialed in, admittedly, but again, this is the type of thing that you should be flying inside the house as far as I'm concerned. So let's get a quick comparison here. Hold on, this battery started to... No, we should be fine. I think maybe hopefully this battery won't freak out. All right. Again, I'm really stacking the deck against the BLV5, but this is the type of rig that you want to be flying inside the house. Teddy, back up. Teddy, back up. Jesus, dog. I switched a motor over, and it is spinning the wrong direction. So let me fix that real quick. No, I'm just going to throw a battery into this other rig, which should be fine. This is a Mobula. This is a Mobula 6 2024 with GemFan 1219S propellers. I've moved it over into a Newbie Drone Cockroach Light AF frame, and I've also switched the canopy to an old school Mobula 6 canopy. Teddy loves this rig. Look at him. He loves it. This is his favorite rig. Easy, Teddy Spaghetti. Oh, man, something's... I got a motor that's banged up or something like that on this thing. Whoa. What did I just hit? Ignore the shaking. I thought that was because the USB port... I noticed that the USB port that Happy Model used for the 2024 is longer, and it was pushing into the battery. And I thought that's what was causing this weird vibration issue. As it turns out, it's not, because I fixed that, and it's still doing it. So really what's probably happening here is one of these motors is banged up. These are direct soldered motors, so that's super annoying to fix that, but I will fix it one of these days. But yeah, just as a comparison point, this is what's really safe to fly in the house as far as I'm concerned. These are lower kV motors. These are only 28,000 kV 0702s, but I do have them paired with Gemfan 1219S propellers, which really wakes these lower kV motors up. Oh god, that was awkward and ugly. Okay, the hover point is way higher than I'm used to. I usually fly this build on 260 mAh 1S batteries. Right now I've got it on a 300 mAh battery, and boy can I feel the difference. What that's done is it's put the hover point down below where I've got the throttle expo, so the throttle is a bit of a mess right now because of the heavier battery that I have on here, but that's okay. As a comparison, I just wanted to show you what a proper super lightweight indoor rig moves around like. And like the confidence that I can have with this rig is way higher because it weighs like half as much. And so when I hit, when I smack into the bar cart, it's probably not going to break my favorite glasses because it's so much lighter, Whereas, 75 millimeter rigs in general are all, way heavier than 65 millimeter rigs. So I don't really like any of the 75s in the house because of how much heavier they are. But that's just me. If you have less breakable stuff, or you just don't like the people that you live with as much as I do, maybe you don't care. But that's on you, man. Remember, happy wife, happy life. So yeah, there we go. There's a little comparison for you of a proper indoor rig versus a not indoor rig. Here's the thing, though. If I took this little thing outside and there's a little bit of wind, the wind is going to massacre this thing. This guy is going to deal with the wind outside a lot better. If I start flying around a jungle gym, this thing's going to be insane. Like you saw, I played you some footage with a very similar rig ripping around the jungle gym because it's so light. This thing is going to be harder to move around the jungle gym, but I go full throttle on this thing and I can hurl this up over the trees. You go full throttle on this and it's just not going to do that as good, right? So this is super limited to flying very small. There are areas that you can fly small in everywhere, right? This gives you a little bit more latitude to fly a little bit bigger, which is cool. And some people will really like that about this. There's a lot of people that really prefer 75 millimeter rigs because of the extra power that they have. What's kind of funny is that the 65 millimeter rigs that we have nowadays with the higher KV motors, they've actually got better power to weight ratios than almost all of the 75 millimeter rigs, but don't tell those people that. They'll get all pissed off and defensive. But still, unquestionably, the 75 millimeter rigs being heavier, they will get pushed around less by the wind. And so there is absolutely a place for 75 mil rigs. And this is a super interesting one. That's for sure. I'm kind of blown away, and I'm so happy that I got to have this experience to kind of open my eyes to what 2S will do on an analog 75 millimeter rig. I can't wait to see what it does on one that's you know, me doing a totally custom 2S analog 75mm build, I'm probably going to be 8 or 9 grams lighter than this is going to be my guess. We'll see. I'm going to be doing it, and I'll probably do it on the live streams here. So you guys will get to see this. But yeah, man, for a bind and fly, this thing is really decent. I'm super excited about this frame, this new material Cockroach 75 frame. Like I said before, if this was your first rig, if this is your first rig, you're lucky as hell. This is a heck of a rig to start on. And you know, Newbie Drone, the newbie in Newbie Drone's name, they focus on rigs for new folks, for newbies. And so yeah, to get yourself in the door with a company that's in California versus overseas, good customer service, yada yada yada, all that good stuff. Nothing wrong with this. Nothing wrong with this for a first rig. You're lucky as hell if this is your first rig. Cool. I got to get caught up on chat. I've completely ignored you guys. I apologize. Again, CiottiFPV.com is my website. Tons of different ways you can support me over there. The thing that helps me the most is when you join my Patreon. You can join it for $3 a month. That is 10 cents a day, my friends. You're into FPV. This is not an expensive hobby. It's also not a cheap hobby. You've got an extra 10 cents a day. Me doing this testing, I will prevent you from buying something at one point, and then you will save $50, $100, $200. 10 cents a day sounds pretty good now, doesn't it? Support me and I'll keep doing this, yo. Curtis Hayes says, what's the BetaFPV quad coming out later this month? If I knew, do you really think I would tell you and violate the embargo and shit? Come on. Curtis Hayes says, we need to see Teddy's new hairdo. Teddy Spaghetti! Come here. Well, you kind of saw it. Yeah. You guys just saw it. Cool. You saw it. P. Richard Scott's in the chat. What's up, homie? He says, I just saw Deadpool. No way. I just saw Deadpool at that AMC. Very cool. What is Sugarloaf? I thought, are you not in the opposite direction of Sugarloaf Mall? I would think that there's a movie theater closer than that to you. Uriel says, dude, you are thinking you're send of because you sit on floor. Oh, are you saying you're thinking he kicked me out because I was sitting on the floor? Maybe. I don't know. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Thrash FPV says, after PID tuning and even before swapping from 28 to 40,000 kV motors, I still get this almost double throttle, or that it still throttles up a bit. What else should I change? That is typically indicative of PID gains that are too high. Going from 28,000 kV motors to 40,000 kV motors. The 40,000 kV motors are going to provide so much better response time that you need to pull the PID tune down a lot. And you're going to probably get the PID tune all the way down to pretty much stock, which is going to feel weird, but those motors are nuts. So that's okay. Keep pulling the PID tune down and you should get to the point where it stops doing that. Yeah, there you go. Do that. Lewis the 18th says, how do you feel about Walksnail rigs? Are they too heavy for 1S? Pretty much, yeah. The 6 extra grams that Walksnail entails takes a 1S rig, almost regardless of what you do, down to about a 2-minute runtime, which is just not quite enough. I do it on the RC drift car chasing rig because it's the lightest weight thing, and it's just awesome to have something that lightweight that does 1080-60. It's really hard on the batteries, so your batteries are not going to last many cycles before they start to really shit the bed. And like, you're just kind of, for me, like at like a minute and 30 seconds, I'm really starting to get warmed up. At about 2 minutes, I'm in it. And then it's time to come home, or like it's falling out of the sky, depending on how hard I was flying. So, and then even on 75mm rigs, it's just not there. The extra 6 grams of Walksnail takes you into 2S land. If you keep it on a 65mm build, if you want to do 1S with Walksnail, it's a 65mm build. The 75mm builds are really, really tough because like you're now flying them outside, And when you're outside, you're charging around, covering ground, and now you're really hammering the hell out of the battery, and now you're getting like a minute and 20 seconds, a minute and 30 seconds runtime. If you limp it around outside, you can get 2 minutes, but that's not how you fly outside. So like, if you're gonna do 1S with Walksnail, it's a 65, keep it as light as you possibly can, 0702, 36,000, 40,000 kV motors. Don't dig into the throttle like crazy, fly it inside the house, fly it slow, burst the throttle. When you just do quick throttle bursts like you do inside the house, even a 40,000 kV 702 motor will be very efficient. Almost regardless of the kV, when you're at 30% throttle, the only thing that matters for runtime is how heavy the rig is. The higher kV motors are the tiniest little bit less efficient, but it's negligible. And so you can do a 40,000 kV build, and if you fly it in a small spot, and when you're in a small spot, 99% of the time you're at 30% throttle, or 28 or 32, you're going to get great runtime. And then those couple of split seconds that you burst full throttle, you're going to get a huge hit of power. And it's going to sag the hell out of the battery for that split second. And you're going to get a little bit less runtime than with a lower kV motor, but it's going to eat like 1 second of extra runtime, and it's inconsequential. So you can do a crazy high kV build, just fly it slowly, and yeah, there you go. 661FPV says, I'm surprised you haven't gotten a bind and fly analog Mobula 8 just to try it out. They really do fly really well when you use the right batteries, which is the smallest, lightest battery you can get. There's no question mark, so I don't know if that's a question there. If Happy Model sent me one, I would gladly rail it around, but it's hard for me to justify spending $100+ on these bind and flies to do a review live stream where it's, like I make like 2 or 3 cents in views from these live streams. So yeah, that's not a model that really makes sense for me, unfortunately, in terms of me doing this full time. That would cost me way more money than I would actually make from it, unfortunately. So yeah, I don't really have the ability to do that. The main thing though that keeps me away from the 85mm motor-to-motor rigs with 2-inch propellers is that the frames are so much bigger that there's a ton of prop guard in view, which I don't like. And so yeah, the 85mm rigs, like, they're interesting, but here's the other thing: the 75mm rigs make plenty of power, especially now that we're diving into the world of 2S. So at some point, I will dive down the 85mm rabbit hole a little bit more. I've flown them in the past. I was not really impressed. I'm sure with enough R&D, and time, we could figure out a good battery motor prop combo. What is interesting is apparently HGLRC's new 85mm 2-inch prop frame is really durable. It's also very heavy, but it is really durable. So that was one of my old complaints, is that the BetaFPV and the Happy Model 85mm frames, everybody said were like super fragile. And I had the BetaFPV frame die on me within a couple of batteries on the one that I built eons ago. So yeah, the durability is now apparently a lot better, but there's still going to be a ton of duct in view, which is super annoying for me. And the 75mm rigs fly pretty damn good. But as we've been talking about lately, I am at the limits of some of these 75mm rigs, and I am like getting 2 minutes of runtime with some of them, which is not quite enough. So that does push me towards the 85s a little bit. It won't be soon. I would much rather do a 2S 75mm build, I think. I think that the 85s are going to have to be 2S anyway. I don't think that 1S is going to even remotely cut it on an 85. So now I'm into the 2S world anyway, and 2S on these 75s rails. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I will definitely do it. I have some of the 85 frames. I have some motors that I'm kind of interested in, but that's, me diving into that is me creating 50 to 100 hours easily of work for myself, and that's a lot to kind of sign up for when there's a lot of other stuff that I'm sort of more interested in that's going to be a lot less of a time sink. I hope that makes sense. But I will get there for sure. 661 also says, I use the GNB Yellow Label 380 2S high volt on the Mobula 8. The lighter battery also makes it not break as easy when you crash. A lot of people breaking the Mobula 8 are using massive lipos. Yeah, makes sense. 6S1 also says, I've also heard the Cinewhoop 450 MAH2S with BT 3.0 are extremely lightweight and work really well in the Mobula 8. Yeah, that's actually, I have 2 of those batteries, and I have them next to the 85mm stuff. These batteries will be used on the 85mm build. But again, don't hold your breath. That's on a back burner. Nate Adams tagged me and said, if you were going to build an 85mm to carry an Insta360 Go 2, what would you go with for motors and AIO? I have no idea, Nate. I do not talk about stuff that I haven't personally built and dialed in and like ensured is a good combination. The best I can do for you is tell you to look at the bind and flies that exist that are close to that formula. So look at the 85mm frame bind and flies that are out there. Look at what motors and props that they use, and then go a little bit bigger, because none of them are designed to carry a 26-gram HD camera, right? So you're going to want to take whatever they're using and just bump it up a little bit. Go a millimeter wider on the motor, a millimeter taller on the motor, higher KV on the motor, that kind of thing. And that'll get you in the ballpark. Keep in mind that on my tiny lifters with the Insta360 Go 2, I do get ducked in view when I fly them really slowly. So on an 85mm rig, that's going to be significantly worse. Again, that's one of the reasons that I've stayed away from 85s, is that like when you put everything in the middle here, those ducts stick really far out. So so what somebody is now thinking is, oh, well then just push the camera forward. Okay, you push this camera forward and now it starts to overload the front motors and you get a rig that flies even worse. And carrying a camera, a 26-gram camera up here really makes these things fly pretty bad. That's why I call them tiny lifters, because lifters kind of fly bad. But you're making sacrifices to carry a really heavy camera. That's kind of the deal, right? So yeah, with an 85mm rig, yes, it's making more power, so you can technically move this camera forward a little bit, but I think you're going to very quickly get into diminishing returns. And yeah, I don't know. For me, carrying the Insta360 Go 2, this is the way to do it. If you search my channel for Tiny Lifter, I've got probably 10 or 15 live streams trying all different motors, different frames, carbon fiber brace, no carbon fiber brace, different mounts. Year and a half to 2.5 years ago, I went hard on this formula and tested tons of stuff and did it all on the live stream, so you guys can check them out. Uriel says, the right side of the hair for Mr. Ciotti does not look good. Somebody tell him. Looks fine to me. Cheetonian says, how was the teddy groom? As always, he was a pain in the ass when they try to get the matted hair off of him, but other than that, he's fine. Uriel says, send me a drawing of the 1mm axes. I will fix the IN titanium. I'm not sure what that means. Cheetonian says, you're showing the video of the Acrobee outside. We can't see the screen. Cool. This is where I figured that out. Thrash says, isn't the diversity on ELRS pointless and added weight? Possibly, but it's not much added weight. This little antenna probably weighs 0.05 of a gram. So it's whatever. Curtis Hayes says, we saw the Ultimate Freestyle. We saw the other flights, but not the... Okay, cool. Cheetonian says, it's like I'm slightly tripping because of all the colors flashing and whatnot. Yeah. If you want to trip without the danger of drugs, this is it, my friends. Tiny Shark FPV says, do I need to put a capacitor for a 2S build, like the 2S Walksnail build, or leave it even an analog 2S 2-inch build? Not so far in my experience. I am not running a capacitor on my 2S Walksnail build. Newbie Drone has put a capacitor in this build, though. They've kind of stuffed it inside here. There's a perfectly good spot for it, so I mean, like, whatever. It's not like the capacitors really weigh anything. Capacitors are never going to hurt performance. They're only ever going to either make no difference or make things better. So this makes a lot of sense, putting a capacitor in here, especially for 2S going through an AIO. It's probably a 0.1 or 0.2 gram weight penalty. This has plenty of power, so yeah, whatever. It's annoying to me to have to put these capacitors into Cinewhoops. There's usually not a great spot for them, but this particular canopy has this big-ass void in the back, so yeah, I mean, whatever. You know, I can't really give you a straight answer on that because I haven't done a lot of 2S builds. What I can say is if the AIO has enough onboard capacitors, then no, you don't need an external capacitor. If it doesn't, then you do. If you do a 2S build and there's a lot of video noise, a capacitor might help with that. If there's not a lot of video noise, the only thing that the capacitor will help with is when you crash it really hard. And it might make the AIO survive a little bit longer. So I love that they put this capacitor in here because either it cleaned up the video noise, maybe it didn't have video noise, and they put it in for durability. And that's awesome. They took care of it. They did the install. It's there. It's not going to make anything worse other than the extra 0.2 of a gram or whatever that it weighs. And it has the potential to make the AIO last a lot longer when you start crashing it really hard on 2S. So that's the best answer I can give you. Cheetonian says, comments on them putting a cap on the... Hey, we just talked about it. Would the OSD flash be worse without? Maybe. The OSD definitely flashes a lot less on this BLV5 versus the Hummingbird V3 and the BLV4. So maybe the capacitor helped with that. Hard to tell. Uriel says, send me a drawing of axis 1mm. What is axis 1mm? YouTube just did the thing and scrolled me all the way to the bottom. Trying to find my place. Uriel also says, I'm doing 2S on my Emax free dinghies. What's an Emax free dinghy? Freestyle, maybe? Tiny Shark says, for flying in front of your yard, why not just go 85mm? Too much duct in view, and I'm not convinced that it's going to be better than 75mm. I think that 75mm might be the sweet spot. With 75, you're going to have a lot more like options too. A lot more prop options, a lot more battery options. Maybe not. I don't know. I haven't done much with the 85s. I hate how much duct there is in view. I really, really, really do. And previously, the frames were all fragile trash. Now, apparently, the HGLRC frames are awesome. So, yeah, we'll get there. I'll do some 85mm stuff. Maybe I'll change my own mind. But the 75mm stuff is awesome outside. Cheetonian says, 2S things. The BetaFPV 1102s can be had in either 14,000 or 18,000. Yep, get them in 18,000 and then motor limit them down. Also, thoughts on the BetaFPV Meteor 75X V2 frame. Super fragile. Don't do it. It's I tried it. It's no good. Don't do it. Oh, interesting. Cheetonian says that it'll take the X12 stock. Yeah, I still don't like it. That Meteor 75X frame is no good. It's super annoying the way that the motors mount. And then I've found them to be incredibly fragile. If you're going to do a double stack setup on it, it's going to break. That frame is the reason that I broke that AIO. I broke the pads off of that AIO. It's also going to make it impossible for you to plug into the BetaFPV port on here. So yeah, I don't like that frame at all. But that's just me. Zoe101 Dog with a Blog says, are you opposed to trying two 1S batteries on 75mm? Not at all. That is the exact setup that I did on the Tiny Lifter way back when. I've always loved this setup. The problem with this setup is trying to find a frame that will hold two 1S batteries in a way that they don't come flying out when you crash. The Cockroach 75 frame comes with these little TPU pieces that will do it, that will hold two 300 mAh batteries, and that's one of the reasons that I'm so excited about this new Cockroach 75 frame in the softer plastic. Maybe I'll end up using this frame on my 2S 75mm build. We'll see. I haven't really started like theory crafting it out yet. But yeah, I actually really love that setup because then you go out to fly, you just bring a whole shitload of 300 mAh batteries. And you bring your 1S rigs, you bring your 2S 75 rig, and you've got all the same batteries, and it's awesome. And when you use these little batteries, these are very lightweight. 2 of these guys is super light. It's hard to find 2S 300 mAh batteries. So yeah, I love that setup. 2 Lava 2, or you could even go down, like you said, to Lava 260s. I would stay with the 300s, but 2 Lava 260 mAh batteries are 15 grams, same weight as the 2S 300 BT 3.0. Mounting it will be a challenge to figure out. There you go. Thrash FPV says, what would you, at a minimum, motor limit the iGal motors to for 2S? I just don't want to blow an ESC 12 amp. Always motor limit like crazy first, and then just fly it. So motor limit to like 50%, and then fly it. It'll feel like shit. Go to 60. You can do it in the on-screen OSD. Yaw left, pitch forward. It'll get you into the on-screen OSD. Go into profile. And then I think it's MISC PP, and there'll be motor output LMT, and so you can put it to 50%, take it off, fly it for a second, land it, go into the OSD, 60%, take it off, fly it, land it 70%, and just dial in like that. Titan says, could you show your tune on the Mobula 2024? No, but I will show you the tune on this. My tunes won't do you any good. Tuning in Betaflight nowadays is infinitely easy. You take the master multiplier and you move it from 1.0 to 1.2. You fly it, you make sure it's not making weird noises trying to fly away. You land it, you put it to 1.4. Fly it, make sure it's not acting weird, 1.6. Fly it, make sure it's not acting weird, 1.8. At some point, it'll start acting or sounding weird, and then you back it off, and you're done. That's your tune. If you can do more than one slider, you do the, I'll show you. I'll show you exactly what to do. If you can handle more than one slider. But doing that master multiplier tune will get you a tune on your specific rig that is way better than my tunes on my specific rigs. Got me? And I'm not just saying that. I don't care. I'm not showing you, I'm not showing you my tune because there's something magical in it. My tunes are bullshit. They're super simple because I keep them backed off enough so I can pound these things to death and I don't have the issue of them flying away. So like you copying off of my tunes is going to give you a significantly worse flying craft than if you just take that master multiplier and start creeping it up little by little by little until the thing starts acting weird and then back it off a little bit. Cool? My tunes also have things that make them very soft and they don't track the sticks all that well because I fly for footage rather than flying for the experience of flying. You guys don't have YouTube channels that you rely on to put food on the table. So for you, it doesn't matter what your flight footage looks like. You should be tuning so that it feels good and so that you have more fun when you're flying. Cool? My tunes are not like that at all. My tunes are set up to provide footage that looks really, really good. This is the tune that it comes with, default, that flew pretty much identical to mine. This is my tune that was in all of that flight footage that you saw. You actually, at one point during that flight footage, I took these top two sliders. They were here. The top two sliders were here. You got to see me push these top two sliders up to there. And so the last couple of batteries were with the tune here. Again, this is a tune that's set up to provide buttery smooth flight footage at the cost of the stick feel. So for me flying this, it doesn't feel nearly as good, but the footage looks better, which for me makes sense. For you, it probably doesn't, unless you do have a YouTube channel that people actually watch. So there you go. I could probably keep pushing this tune. Okay, so what I said, so the master multiplier tune is the super, super, super easy button. If you want a little bit more of a dialed in tune, start with it zeroed out. It's just the top two sliders. Instead of the master multiplier, you're going to use the top 2 sliders. You're going to put these 2 sliders here at 1.0. You're going to fly it, make sure it's not weird. Then you're going to land it. You're going to bring this top D gain slider up to 1.2, fly it, make sure it's not angry. Then you're going to bring this up to 1.4, and you're going to start to chase with the second slider. And now you're going to go 1.4, 1.1, fly it, make sure it's not weirding out. Then you go 1.6, 1.3, fly it, make sure it's not weirding out, 1.8, 1.5, make sure it's not getting angry, 2.0, 1.7. At this point, pretty much any rig is going to be dialed. If it's still not dialed and it's still not acting weird, what you can now do is come down to the master multiplier and move it up to 1.2. Fly it, make sure it's not doing weird stuff, 1.4, 1.6, 1.8. If you can get this all the way up to 2.0, that frame is awful stiff, and that AIO is awful noise free. Most rigs, you will not be able to get that cranked up. By that point, if you've got an even remotely decent pairing of propellers, motors, voltage, and all-up weight, it should be absolutely dialed. There should be no prop wash ever, 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 ever. I've actually never gotten a PIDs up that high before. You'll run into electrical noise or just physical vibrations before you get to that point. But if you have a bad enough combination of motor, prop, all-up weight, voltage, you might need to actually get it up that high to get all of the prop wash out. Nate Adams says, after watching your Newbie Drone 2S rip, I want to build an HDZero Freestyle 2S. What would you change with a Flywoo 2S AIO? I don't know that AIO at all, so I can't really speak to it. HDZero Eco VTX and Lux Cam, RC and Power 1002 14,000 kV motors. So first and foremost, you're going to want to go with the T-Motor 1002 18,000 kV motors, because then you're not running the motors at 100%. 14,000 kV motors, you're going to have them at 100% all the time. You're not going to have any extra headroom. If you want more power, you can't. So go with a 1002 18,000 kV, motor limit it down to like 80%, 85%, and now you can digitally, whenever you want, turn the power up. 14,000 kV is like just barely enough power, but yeah, it makes no sense. It makes more sense to have a motor that's a little bit higher kV and to use the motor limiting that we have available to us for free in Betaflight that works brilliantly to give us that extra little bit of power if we ever need it. If you go fly like a big spot, or if you want to try carrying like a heavy-ass camera on there or something like that, you've got the extra power. You don't have to spend $50 on a new set of motors and put the time into swapping them out. Cool. Yeah, I don't know anything about that AIO. You can, I mean, that's going to be a double stack build similar to my Walksnail build, so you can watch the development of the Walksnail 2S rig to give you some ideas on like how to stack these up, which screws you need, the canopies, that kind of stuff. So yeah, there you go. Lewis the 18th says, I just remembered, are you going to get the Lightning 2? Stu seems to think it's awesome. I have no idea what that is. I don't follow any of the bind and fly rigs because the manufacturers don't send them to me for free and I can't afford them. So it looks like the Lightning 2 is this YMZFPV thing. I've seen a bunch of reviewers that seem to really like this. But yeah, nobody sends me things other than Newbie Drone and Weebleed, and so you will probably not see this on the channel. But I've heard good things. That's what I can say. There's lots of reviews on that, so you can check those out to get a feel for it. 661 says, I'm saying with the lightest possible battery, the Mobula 8 flies really well. Not a question. And the Mobula 8 is a good deal faster than a 2S 75mm. The Mobula 8 really has some good power. Yeah, I don't doubt it. I'll get there. I will test the 85mm stuff. But again, at the moment, the 75mm 2S stuff has plenty of power for me. I don't need the extra power. Flying a Cinewhoop outside is about the mix of being able to shoot tight gaps and then have some power to do other stuff. 85 millimeter rigs are going to start to get so heavy that the ability to shoot those little tight gaps becomes more difficult. Yes, it's going to have more power to throw up over trees and stuff, but personally, I prioritize shooting those little tiny gaps in the garden. So for me, the 75s are God. But again, I haven't flown an 85 in a long time, many, many years. So maybe it'll change my mind. But yeah, like the fact that the 85s can make more power, that's not a selling point for me. The 75s make plenty of power. So that 85 millimeter thing, it's not going to come up in the list. It's not going to be in the on deck circle any faster because it just doesn't do anything that I'm interested in, right? I'm going to be testing that at some point because you guys want me to test it, not because I have any personal interest in it. Because for me, I'm going to hate the extra ducts in view. I'm going to hate the fact that we're gaining weight. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? So I will eventually test it for you guys, but it's just, yeah, I have stuff that I'm more interested in. Matthew Guts with a $10 super chat. Thank you so much, brother. He says, have you tried the HDZero 90 FPS camera? I have not. I'm thinking of trying to build a 2S freestyle rig with a black box to learn more about PID tuning. Any part recommendations? Not really. I'm very early in the 2S thing. I also have no idea like what kind of a 2S freestyle rig you want. Is it a tiny whoop you're looking for? Is it a ductless rig? Is it a long range rig? Probably not a long range rig because you said freestyle, but I don't have enough to go off of to actually recommend any parts. And I don't just blindly like tell you to buy parts that I have affiliate links to. Like if I'm going to give you a recommendation, I'm going to give you a recommendation based on you giving me actual info that I can use to recommend something that's going to work for you, rather than just, oh yeah, I like this motor, here's an affiliate link to it, definitely buy this. And then you get it and it doesn't make enough power for you because I didn't ask you the right questions to get the right info out of you to suggest a motor that will make the amount of power that you want, right? So yeah. I haven't tried the HDZero 90 FPS camera because I can't find a great scenario for HDZero. And the 90 FPS camera is really not for tiny whoops. And so, yeah, I don't know if I'll ever try the 90 FPS camera. That camera sits in a place where I would just do an analog build. And I would get pretty much the same range. The breakup to me with analog is easier to fly through than the digital breakup of HDZero. Analog is a lot cheaper. It's a lot lighter. So yeah, I can't, there's not a situation where that 90 FPS camera makes sense other than me just testing it for you guys, which I eventually do. I eventually test as much as I possibly can, but I always front load testing stuff that I'm interested in that makes sense in my scenarios that I live in, right? Cinematic flying, freestyle flying. So yeah. Cheetonian says, I think what was being pointed out was that Tiny Whoop has 450 mAh 2S BT 3.0 lighter than the BetaFPV now. What? I think what was being... that Tiny Whoop has... Oh, okay. Yes. Tiny Whoop has 2S 450 mAh batteries that have the little pigtail here on them. And this little pigtail setup is definitely lighter than this plastic brick here. The problem with this pigtail setup is that when you crash, this battery has a tendency to fall out of the battery holder, and then you got a little dingleberry, and you got to come back and fix it, and it's just super annoying. I will, in some cases, take the weight penalty of this thing because this locks the battery in, and this battery will not come out because you slide it in from the rear, and then so when you nose into something, this plastic boy binds on the frame and keeps this battery in place. So that's why I go with these guys. But yes, Tiny Whoop has a 450 2S BT 3.0 that is lighter than this for sure. YouTube just did the thing again. Scrolling back up. Titan says, what AIOs do you use for 2S Walksnail builds? At the moment, I'm using the BetaFPV version 3 12 amp. I have not put enough batteries through this to say that it's durable enough and that you should all run out and buy it. The reason that I use it is that it does not have a USB port on the bottom, and so that allows me to use this Mobula 7 V4 frame where I cut out the upper supports and then it puts the battery up nice and high. I don't really know what I can tell you. One of the other AIO options is the HGLRC Spectre, and I bought 2 of those with my own money, and they both blew up immediately. So, and it is an AIO that claims that it's 1S, 2S. It blew up on 1S though. So, in my opinion, definitely don't get that AIO. There's one person that has commented on a bunch of my videos that he has 8 of those AIOs and that he's beat the hell out of them and they've lasted a long time and they're great. So there's that. I can't justify buying a 3rd one. 2 of them right out of the box, letting go like that. And I have had a history with HGLRC, which is that like 90% of their products do not work right out of the box or after like 1 or 2 batteries. So I'm done. If you guys want to buy a bunch of those Spectres and test them, more power to you. But they're dead to me. HGLRC has been dead to me, and then I feel bad after a couple of years, and I try them again, and they screw me over again, and then they're dead to me for another couple of years, and then I try them again. It's just this horrible, abusive relationship. And so for the next couple of years, they're dead to me. I've had this thing plugged in the whole time. Something really cool about this that Newbie Drone did, that Chris Rosser discovered. When this is plugged into USB, the VTX turns itself off so it doesn't get too hot and cook this AIO. So the fact that I had this thing plugged in this whole time and I didn't smell it burning, that's because of that. I hope everybody else figures that out. That's a really cool thing that that Newbie Drone did with this that I was pretty impressed with. Kevin the Alien says, I feel like whoops are impractical for 85mm. It's great as a beginner because you're bouncing off stuff left and right, but I think an open prop design will be awesome on 85mm. Yeah, that's kind of where I've been for a while, is that if you're going to go bigger than 75, you might as well go to like a toothpick or something that's open prop. Flying these 75mm rigs outside the house, though, in the close quarters of that little garden area, has kind of opened my eyes to the magic of having ducts outside. So I do understand 85s a lot more, and I am going to test them. But again, there's a lot of other stuff that's going to get tested first. Taking an open propped 85mm rig and trying to shoot those gaps in the garden, damn near impossible. And then every single time I crash that rig, I'm going to have to take the walk of shame. Having the prop guards to keep little sticks and leaves and shit from touching the propellers on these little tiny rigs that don't have enough power to push a blade of grass out of the way is a total pain in the ass. So for me, an open prop rig, it's got to be like big motor, 2S or even 3S is really, I think, where I want to be, but it's got to be a big, powerful enough motor to actually be able to turtle mode back over, push blades of grass out of the way, that kind of thing. Kevin the Alien says, my Dark Knight frame 2S is still being improved, but it's a blast and an absolute ripper. I'm sorry, Drac Knight frame, he says. I'm not familiar with that one. Titan says, does this tuning tips also apply to bigger rigs or just tiny whoops? It applies to absolutely everything. Tuning is tuning. There's nothing really magical or different about tiny whoop tuning versus 5-inch tuning. With like 8, 9, 10-inch lifter rigs, the tuning does change a little bit, but like, you guys aren't building that stuff. And if you get into building that stuff, like, that world will let you know. And the first time you put it up in the air, you'll see that the tuning is a bit of a nightmare on them. Talha says, bit of off-topic, sorry, what's the best O3 air unit only 25 Cinewhoop? No such thing as best, almost ever. There's only ever different, and every once in a while there will be garbage. There will be just like, this is trash, definitely don't buy this. But there's never a best. There's only ever different. So I have no information to go off of here, so I can't make a recommendation. To give you an idea of what a valuable answer, what you're looking for. Let me put it this way. On my Fiverr page, which is linked on CiottiFPV.com. One of the things that I offer through Fiverr is build planning. You sit down with me for a half an hour one-on-one. I ask you 20 to 25 questions. Who your favorite pilot is, where do you fly, how often do you crash, how long have you been flying, what are you doing with the flight footage, whole bunch of questions. The answers to all of these questions are the only way that I can possibly answer what the best O3 Air Unit only 25 Cinewhoop is. Anybody that answers the question that you asked here, what's the best O3 Air Unit only 25 Cinewhoop, they don't care about you. They are going to tell you what they personally like the best. They're a different person than you are. So that answer that they've given you is worthless. Picking up what I'm laying down. So I just don't do it. I just, when people ask that question, I have this conversation with you. If you don't want to spend the money to do a build planning session, I don't blame you. $40 is a lot of money. $40 for half an hour is a lot of money. $60 for an hour is a lot of money. What you've got to do, though, is that you've got to do all this research yourself, right? I've spent over 8 years figuring all this shit out, and that's what you're paying for, right? You're paying for 8 years of knowledge, and 8 years of it costing a fortune for me to buy all this stuff, right? I've spent tens of thousands of dollars buying all this stuff to learn all of this, to be able to answer that question properly. But I'm going to answer the question properly. I'm not just going to tell you what my preferred, not that I really know. I'm not, I can't really afford to go up to the O3 system quite yet. And I'm probably not going to. I'll just wait for the O4 system. But yeah, there you go. I'm not going to answer that question. There isn't an answer to that question because you haven't given enough data for the answer to be a good answer. And again, if you go on Facebook and you ask that question, a whole bunch of people are going to answer that question. Those are worthless answers. You haven't given them any information. The fact that they've answered the question without, like, if someone actually cares about you when you ask that question on Facebook, their response is going to be, who's your favorite pilot? What are you doing with your flight footage? What kind of runtime do you want? How often do you crash? What do you crash into? They're going to ask you the 20 plus questions that I've learned that I need to ask to give you a good answer to that. Make sense? I don't like not answering that question. I would love to say, oh, it's this thing that I have an affiliate link in my description to. Click that so I can make money from you. This answer that I'm giving you hurts me, but it's the answer that you need. And you getting right information is more important than me making a few extra dollars from spamming you with affiliate link and then you getting a rig that doesn't fit your needs properly because I just told you what I personally like. So you get you end up getting a rig that's good for flying cinematic gigs. Do you fly cinematic gigs? Probably not. So it's not the right rig for you. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. Nate, so what you need to do is look at reviews after reviews after reviews. Here's what it comes down to. What is your time worth? If you have a ton of time, you can go down the rabbit hole and search for all the information here on YouTube. There's a couple of really good reviewers like Nick Burns and Joshua Bardwell, and I'm forgetting a couple of others. There are some bad reviewers that say that every single product is the best product ever. Stay the hell away from those. One of the easy ways, in my opinion, to tell a good reviewer from a bad reviewer is just to watch them fly. If they're spending time flying and getting good at flying, they're going to be a good reviewer, typically. If they don't fly very good, they're spending all of their time just grabbing loads of products and just dumping reviews. And you'll see it. You'll see thousands of reviews for thousands of different products. And it's like, well, how could they possibly put any time into any one of these reviews, right? So yeah, if you've got more time than money, you can do the research yourself. Find YouTube reviews, notice what parts are being used, spend lots and lots of time looking up reviews, and then you can kind of form your own opinion. If you have more money than time, hire me and we'll sit down, we'll do a build planning session, and in 30 or 60 minutes, I will give you more information than you could get in a year of research, more than likely. So that's kind of how it breaks down. Nate Adams says, I have had 3, and all 3 have had dead fets. 3 what? Oh, HGLRC Spectre aios. Yep, I've heard that from multiple people. Won't buy HGLRC aios ever again. Their GPS modules are actually really good. So yeah, there you go. Lewis the 18th says, I have that BetaFPV 12 amp AIO, advertised as 1S, I think it is indeed, running on 1002 24,000 kV motors, Walksnail Module 7, and they don't spin up fully on ARM. Any ideas why? It's probably blown up on you. Especially if that just started happening at random. The first step in troubleshooting is always, when did the problem start? You didn't tell me that, so I'm like crippled. It's almost impossible for me to troubleshoot this without knowing at the very least that. But ask yourself that. Ask yourself, when did this problem start? If you were flying it, you unplugged the battery, you plugged another battery in, and all of a sudden that problem started, it has nothing to do with Betaflight, because the 1s and 0s don't just fall out regardless of how hard you hit it. They certainly don't fall out when you just unplug the battery, right? So it's probably a physical issue, and it is probably the fets dying. He said you said they don't spin up on ARM. That makes me think it's multiple motors, so that could be, again, it really 100% depends on when that problem started, but that could be your motor idle in Betaflight is too low, or your startup power in ESC configurator is too low. Lewis says it's new. Okay, so there you go. It's one of those two things. Check that out, and that should get you going. Kevin the Alien says, the Drac Knight is an HGLRC school bus style frame, but I did have to drill out the motor screw holes, so there's that. That's annoying, but it's not too bad. Look at that. I'm caught up on chat. There we go. Wow, it is 9:20. We covered a lot on this live stream. Did we not cover enough to warrant you joining my Patreon? CiottiFPV.com. Patreon helps me the most. I am totally crowdfunded so that when people do send me stuff, or when I buy stuff to review, I can tell you that it's trash and you should never, ever, ever buy it. This is not one of those. I was actually super impressed by this. I was worried that, you know, Newbie Drone's kind enough to send this to me. I was worried that this review was going to be, this thing sucks. These motors are a stupid size and they overheat. It's super fragile. But no, there are some really great things about this, and this has opened my eyes to the fact that analog 75mm rigs might want 2S. And so massive thank you to Newbie Drone for sending this over. I've given you all my thoughts. You have to decide if this is for you or not. I've given you a ton of flight footage. Yeah. But I'm impressed. I'm way more impressed than I thought that I would be. In terms of an upgrade path for this, I talked about it. There are a couple of ways that you could make this significantly lighter weight, and that would help with its ability to change directions, and that would make it even more fun to bounce off of a jungle gym. This could be a really interesting jungle gym basher, front yard, backyard rig. This is cool, man. This is really, really cool. I don't think you'll be disappointed with this. Unless you have higher standards than me, and I don't run into many people that do. Thrash FPV says, listening to Reddit advice made me buy RC and Power 1002s for a high-power parking lot ripper. Shit's literally a cinematic motor. Yeah, Reddit advice is probably a little bit better than Facebook group advice, but not much better. Careful with advice from strangers. Most strangers that are into FPV that have the time to hang out and give advice like that are either brand new or they don't fly very much. The guys that are working it and that are flying a lot to get good and learn this shit, we don't have time to hang out on the Facebook groups very much anymore, or on Reddit. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's just kind of true. The fact that we ever answer, to be honest, like I don't really answer stuff anymore, because when I do, people don't necessarily know who I am, so the answers that I'm giving don't hold the weight that they should, And then what's really annoying is that the dumb people that don't know anything fight me on my answers, and they say, no, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. I've flown 14 batteries total. I'm an FPV god. I know everything. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I flew 14 batteries 8 years ago, and then I flew 140, and then I flew 1,400, and now I've probably flown damn near 14,000. So go to hell. Nah, that's probably too high of a number. But yeah, advice from strangers on the internet is more than 50% of the time bad advice. Straight up bad, straight up wrong. It's nasty. So be careful, because like 5-inch rigs will fucking cut your ass deep. And so be super careful with advice from strangers. That's what I got for you guys tonight. I'll be back on... Nope. Well, hold on. I am flying Pride Atlanta on Sunday, which I'm super excited about. The actual parade. I'm flying the concert Saturday night and then the parade Sunday. Parade starts at 10:30 a.m. on Sunday. 11:30, 12:30, 1:30, 2:30. I will probably be out of there by 2. So there's a chance that I can get back here and get the stream going by 3. There's also a chance that the stream won't start until 4 o'clock Eastern on Sunday. I will stream, but it might start at 4. So fair warning. But I will try to be back and get the stream started by 3 on Sunday. Monday night, I have no conflicts. The stream will start at 10 p.m. Eastern Time if Joshua Bardwell is streaming at 8. If Joshua is not streaming at 8, I might take his time slot. So there's your stream schedule for the next couple of days. CiottiFPV.com is my website. Go support me, and I'll keep doing this forever. Love you long time, friends. Bye-bye. I'm not ready. Here is me getting kicked out of the mall, flying the 2S BLV5 Acrobee. Later, friends.